Good afternoon, everyone. As people are filtering into the room, we're going to go ahead and get started here promptly. I have just begun our recording. The recording of today's webinar will be distributed afterwards. You should expect to see that via email within the next 24 hours. We're so glad that you're able to join us this afternoon for this second of a three-part series on endowment growth and growing your endowment. This is, of course, the Marketing Your Endowment webinar, a 30-minute webinar. So we're going to try and keep to that 30-minute time period. This afternoon, we do have a lot of information to cover in a relatively short period of time. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started as people continue to flow into the room. Brad, if you can move to my first slide. So you'll see here on the slide, it says endowment funds grow incrementally through investment returns, but exponentially through new gifts. And actually, I'm going to back up because I realized I didn't even introduce myself or my colleagues. So we'll go ahead and do a little start over on that. I am Josh Anderson, Associate Program Director for Endowment Management with the Episcopal Church Foundation. And I work with churches on developing their endowments. We serve churches in a number of areas when it comes to endowment management, working with churches on the endowment structure, their investment needs, and also growing their endowments, which is really where we're going to be focused today. I'm joined by my colleague Juliette Acker, who will be sharing presenting with me this afternoon. So we're so glad to have you here. And now I'm going to transition into this slide and talk to you about this quote that you see on the screen. So oftentimes when I'm working with churches, I try to convey this idea to them that their endowment funds will grow incrementally through their investment returns, but have the potential to grow exponentially through new gifts. One of the challenges that we often face as leaders is how to maintain a consistent and engaging presence with potential donors in our faith community, though. We know that we want to grow the endowment through new gifts, but how do we invite people into that vision for the endowment? How do we invite people to be a part of the endowment? How can we ensure that the importance and value of our endowment is being conveyed to potential donors? And the answer to that, or one of the ways that we can do that, of course, is by creating an effective marketing and communications plan to help raise awareness and encourage participation from the members of our own faith communities. Brad, if you can advance the slide for me. So, of course, today we're talking about marketing our endowment fund. And I know that marketing may sound like a term that doesn't really have much to do with communities of faith. It kind of feels a little maybe icky or corporate to us. But all that marketing really means, and what we're trying to talk about today, is that marketing is really you providing opportunities to your constituents to learn about the benefits of your endowment and the value of the endowment for your community. So when your adult education committee notifies church members of their programs that they're carrying out, that's marketing. When your fundraising committee advertises a bake sale in your church newsletter, that's marketing. So when the endowment committee is communicating to members of the parish about the endowment, that is marketing as well. And that's really what we want to focus on today. Church endowment funds do need to be marketed, just like any other service or program that you are offering at your in your congregation. Marketing, of course, is largely about communication. It's telling people that your fund exists, your endowment fund is there. It's explaining to them why the endowment fund was created in the first place. Not only that, but marketing provides us an opportunity to describe to people the ways that they can contribute and the advantages that they have in contributing and participating in your endowment fund, and helping them to understand, again, how they can participate. Endowment marketing comes in many different forms. One of the biggest challenges that we face will be communicating the right message and consistently communicating those messages to the appropriate people in your congregation in the most effective way possible. Let's go to the next slide, Brad. So we want to, while this webinar does not provide a whole lot of opportunity for interactivity, we did want to take an opportunity to hear from those of you who are attending live. So what we've done is, and we tried this with part one as well, we've incorporated a couple of poll questions into our webinar this afternoon, because we want to hear from you. One of the things we do at ECF is we try to collect data and understand what's happening at churches. And one of the ways that we can do that is through these types of polls that we can do in this webinar. So I'm going to launch a poll here real quick and just take a second if you can. You should be seeing up on your screen now a poll that reads, how many times per year does your faith community communicate information about your endowment to its members? So 1 to 2 times per year, 3 to 6 times per year, 6 or more times per year, or never. So we'll give you a few seconds to go ahead and respond to that poll question, and then we'll share our real live data with you here. I'm watching the numbers come in live, and it's kind of where I would expect things to be. I'm seeing kind of what I would expect with the group that we have here this afternoon. Give that 15 more seconds. And I will end that. So let's share the results up here. So as you can see, about 58% of people are communicating about their endowment 1 to 2 times per year, which is really what I kind of expected the majority to fall into. I think that most often we talk about the endowment probably at our annual meetings and maybe one other time a year. But for the most part, it probably kind of falls to the end of the line for things that we're communicating about in the parish. Again, 17% even never communicating anything about the endowment, 10% with 6 or more times per year. So for the folks who are maybe doing monthly or every other month communications, and then some 15% of the respondents probably looking at doing some sort of quarterly communication with their endowment. So thank you for participating in that. We will have another poll later in the presentation. But moving on, let's kind of start about let's talk about where to start when it comes to communicating or marketing your endowment fund to potential donors. So effective marketing really does require some level of planning. And typically in the church, that responsibility for marketing planning falls to either the endowment committee or a subgroup of your endowment committee. So perhaps not the full committee, but a task force or subgroup specifically for communicating about your endowment. One of the things I would say is that you should be intentional about creating a marketing plan as a part of your church's overall endowment process, and assign that responsibility for doing so where it makes the most sense for your church. So maybe you have a small endowment committee and the responsibility kind of falls to the entire committee. Maybe you have a larger endowment committee and can set up a subgroup, but make sure that it's kind of understood who is responsible for communicating. Some churches even have a communications committee, and you need to decide and interface with that committee to say, okay, what responsibility does the communication committee hold in communicating about something that is under the umbrella of, say, the endowment committee? You will also want to consider working with your stewardship committee. So it's important that both current and future financial needs are being addressed. So we're not just talking about, a lot of times churches only want to talk about stewardship and just the current financial picture, what the needs for this year are, and then the endowment kind of falls to the wayside, as we saw from our poll results. So we need to be building a communication plan that really incorporates not just the current needs, but also works in this idea of endowment for long-term mission and ministry. Endowments and annual stewardship really do not need to be at odds with one another. I think that they can work together in a friendly and and loving way. I know oftentimes we in the Episcopal Church, I hear from churches often, well, we don't want to talk about the endowment during stewardship season because we don't want to come up against or be talking about the long-term funds of the church when we're trying to raise funds for next year's annual budget. I think that those two things can really kind of work together, and we can come up with a plan that incorporates and really displays to members of the congregation a message that stewardship is not just for the here and now, but stewardship is for the long term as well. And this is really kind of where the message of the endowment comes into play. So one of your goals as a community should be to create a culture of generosity that really encompasses giving in all forms. As we said, both the annual giving is going to be important, and incorporating the endowment into that message as well. I think now Juliette is going to talk a little bit about setting some goals and talking about goals and objectives in our marketing and communications.
Yes, great. Thank you, Josh. So what's the first step in creating a marketing plan? We learned a little bit what marketing is and the different dimensions of your marketing. You want to think about starting with the end in mind. What is your goal? What are your objectives? What do you want to accomplish? And how will you know if you've been successful? Josh mentioned a little bit about endowment marketing and also stewardship marketing. You want to make sure your goals are complementary, that they play well with the other communication that you're doing about giving or overall giving. So the goal and objectives for your church organization should be tailored to your own experience, the audience, who is in your congregation, what are the forms of communication that this audience most relies upon. It's not a one size fits all. But we will give you a sample goal, Brad, if you could advance to the next screen, to use as a guidepost for creating your own goal. So here we have this sample goal: support the endowment fund's goals of raising X number of dollars in contributions or legacy commitments over a specific time period. Now, this is a sample goal, but you again want to think about what are the unique circumstances that you should keep in mind when creating your own goal. One thing that you do want to keep in mind, in general, your marketing goals should answer two questions: what do you want to accomplish, and how will you quantify success? Brad, if you could switch to the next screen. So let's talk a little bit about the objectives. So our goals are visionary, broad-based, generally longer term. Objectives are short-term and actionable. These are the steps that you will take to achieving your goal. Okay, so let's look at some sample objectives. Now, these objectives for endowments can work for newer endowments or more well-established endowments. You'll need to decide which one works for you and for your audience. Raise or increase awareness. If you're a new endowment, you definitely want to make sure people know that you even have an endowment fund, why it was created, how it was created and structured, and the impact and what the fund actually does. What are the things and sources in your church and community that this endowment fund will support? People don't give if they don't know there is a fund to give to. So raising awareness is very important for new endowments. For a more well-established endowment, you may have awareness, but you may need to reinvigorate. There may be new members, or there may be disengaged members of your congregation that may not know about the endowment or may have forgotten about it. So increasing awareness is also important as you grow your endowment and as the endowment ages. Another objective that is really fantastic for growing community around your endowment is to connect the endowment fund to the mission and ministry of your church. Show your congregation how this endowment fund is aligned with the values and vision of your church. This gives people an opportunity to become more engaged in the life of your church and to help build the legacy of your endowment fund and the future of your church. By marketing your endowment, you're sharing. Marketing is communication. That's it. At the very essence, that's what marketing is. Marketing is communicating something over and over again. That's where the consistency parts comes in. So these objectives allow you to share the wonders and the impact of the endowment fund with your congregation. Another great objective to think about for either new or more well-established endowment is to educate. Let donors know how they can participate and the advantages of participating giving. Give them many options to participate. This also goes into motivating participation. Some people don't give because they think, well, I'm not well-resourced, so maybe I am not the ideal candidate to give to an endowment. Show your congregation many different ways that they can participate in giving and give them examples of people who may fit the profile of your intended audience, so they know that there is room for them in this endowment giving campaign as well. Next slide.
Thanks, Juliette. So now let's talk a little bit about identifying your audience for your communication and marketing efforts. So every member of your faith community is going to have a different reason for why they choose to participate or why they don't choose to participate in your endowment fund. Some members choose to give out of Thanksgiving. Some give because a specific program of the church has helped them or someone close to them. Some give simply because of the tax advantages that are available to them because of their gift. And some give because they feel it is, quote, the right thing to do. It's not really realistic for your marketing plan to identify the specific hot button issues for each individual member of your church, but it's just as important to identify what the endowment can offer from several different kind of perspectives and to communicate those benefits to your range of potential donors. This way, you're more likely to reach a diverse group of people with the messages, and that message will speak to them as individuals. And then that, of course, means that more people will want to participate in the endowment. So identify who your audience is and think about what your message is going to be, and then invite as many people into the fold as possible, which leads us into our second poll question here, which I'm going to launch if I can find it. So our second question is about communication channels or channels of communication. How many channels of communication does your faith community utilize in its efforts to communicate about the endowment? So whether that's your newsletter, social media, church bulletins, your website, the list goes on and on and on. How many do you currently at your church utilize in communicating? Seeing some responses come in. And while those responses are coming in, I just want to briefly address, so Susan typed a question into the chat here. We don't have a ton of time today for questions, but I will get to this. So Susan asks us to briefly define endowment in the terms that we're using it here, mentioning that her congregation, people tend to use the term endowment when they really mean long-term investments. And yes, we do see that as well. So when we talk about endowments at the Episcopal Church Foundation, we are typically talking about those endowments that are considered true endowment funds, meaning a donor made a gift and the gift is meant to be there in perpetuity, those true endowments. But we're also talking about long-term investment funds that the vestry may set aside and treat as though they were an endowment, but they have a little more flexibility around them because of the source of those funds, meaning the vestry had set aside funds that were kind of extra, weren't specifically noted by a donor to be long-term funds. So when we're talking about endowments, we are talking about both and, so both true endowments and those endowments that we would refer to as quasi endowments, so the vestry designated endowments. So with our poll results coming in, it looks like the majority of participants on the call here today are using one or two channels of communication for marketing and communicating about their endowment. So maybe the newsletter or the bulletin. Several people in the 3 to 5 channel range which is nice to see. And then one participant answering that they're using 5 or more channels of communication for talking about their endowment. So we appreciate, oh, I should have shared the results as I was going through them. I was just reading them off my screen for you, but here you can see them on your own. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that, and then Juliette's going to talk a little bit about message delivery.
Right, that's great information to see how different churches are sharing their information. So let's talk a little bit about delivering your message and the different channels that you can reach your audience. There are many ways to communicate to potential donors about the endowment fund, but in deciding which communications tools you want to use, you want to again think about your own community and tailor it, the messages, and match up the audience and the message with the communication tool. Some tools are better suited for some messages than others. So let's look at a few communication tools that you might consider. We have church bulletins. Church bulletins are great for short informational messages, messages to motivate giving deadlines. Let's say there's a certain deadline to give to become a part of the Legacy Society. Church bulletins are excellent for that. Sermons are during a sermon, you're able to talk about the greater gift of giving through the context of a biblical lens. So that's an amazing way to give a biblical testimony and perspective on giving. Also, having a testimony as a short sermonette may be a great idea as well. Newsletters, written testimonials are well suited to newsletters, giving updates on what the endowment fund supports. Workshops, I see someone mention that they have an end of life planning workshop. This is a great way to have a larger discussion again about giving in a larger life context. What are you going to do in terms of where you're going to live, your retirement, your end of life health needs? This broadens out the conversation to some people that may not initially come to the conversation about endowment giving. You're also able to do maybe a financial workshop or have an attorney come in. And recognition events. A lot of legacy societies have recognition events. You may have a recognition event for other types of giving to honor the donors. And also it allows the donor community to talk to each other, to encourage each other. And if you invite people who are not donors yet, they're able to talk to donors and understand why your Legacy Society members have decided to give. Of course, individual donor meetings are great. Having that one-on-one connection is really fantastic. And the marketing also should be about relationship building. So thinking about the different channels of communication that will continue to build that relationship. Direct mail is something that people used to talk about a lot. We don't see it so much, but if you're a church that has snowbirds members or seasonal members, you may want to look into direct mail to reconnect them with the church when they're not on site and not in town, or also for sick and shut-in members, people who can't physically come to church, or if you don't have a Zoom service, this is a great way to reconnect with those members. And of course, there's email and social media that may connect you with a more tech-savvy or younger audience. So think about all of these different ways of communication, and it is better to have a few different ways to communicate because not everybody is on every one of these channels. And you do, again, want to think about that consistency and seeing that message again and again. So think about which one is best suited for you and which messages are best suited for a specific communication channel. For example, if you're going to have a seminar or workshop on tax advantages, that's better suited to a workshop or something on a after church than a Sunday sermon. So think about which messages are appropriate for which communication channel. Next slide.
Thanks, Juliette. And you're exactly right. Messaging is so important. And one of the things that you need to do is consider what are those key messages? What are those 2 or 3 essential concepts that everyone in your faith community should know about your endowment fund? And then once you have kind of landed on what those messages are, think about how you might choose to tailor those messages to individual audiences. So not every message is going to appeal to every person in your congregation. While a message on estate planning might appeal to those who are going through major moments of life changes, maybe birth or adoption of a child, if you know where in the Book of Common Prayer the planned giving is mentioned, it's actually in the rubrics for the service for a birth or adoption of a child. Your target audience for those types of messaging is probably better tailored to that audience. You may choose to emphasize different benefits of giving to the endowment to a young parents group than you would to a group of seniors, for example. You also might want to consider when, so tailoring your message not only to audience, but to season as well. So end of year is a great time for messaging about the tax advantages of making a gift to your endowment fund. It's a great time to consider messages about making a gift of appreciated securities and the tax advantages that are available to donors with that, or making a qualified charitable distribution from their retirement account, their IRA. End of year is a great time for that type of messaging. Whereas at the beginning of the year, you might want to consider some messaging around having donors make small, recurring, or automated gifts to your endowment throughout the year. So setting up a monthly gift to your endowment fund or a quarterly gift to your endowment fund. So many churches now utilize online giving platforms that have the systems in place to set up this type of maybe special appeal that would allow a person to set up an automatic quarterly or monthly gift to your endowment fund. I know one of the questions that came in was so many times at this person's church, they talk about the endowment in discussion with estate planning. And oftentimes the discussion of endowment goes hand in hand with planned giving. It doesn't always have to be that way, though. We can talk about and market gifts to the endowment for current giving as well. People don't just have to make a gift to the endowment fund at the end of their life. They can participate in your endowment and be a part of the vision and a part of what your endowment fund does while they're still here. So consider how you might give messaging around that. Overall, the key messages really need to serve as a cornerstone for all of your communication about your endowment. You always want to tie it back again to that mission and vision, making sure that people are clear about what your endowment goes to fund. I often tell churches, the best marketing tool that you have for your endowment is to spend from your endowment and tell people how you spent that money. Do they know what your endowment fund makes possible? It's why I encourage churches, even with the smallest endowments, to spend from their endowment. Even if you can only spend $500 a year from your endowment fund and you can send a kid to church camp for the summer or a week of camp, do that and let people know. It's that type of messaging that is going to invite people into and encourage people to want to be a part of what your endowment makes possible. So really making sure that your message speaks to the mission and vision for your church. Let's go ahead to the next slide, Brad. So don't limit your marketing efforts to members of your church. Are there friends of your church? Maybe your church has a wonderful music program and you host lunchtime concerts. And the audience who comes to those events may be people who are a good target for messaging about your endowment and inviting them into the fold of your endowment as well. If your endowment fund is making possible programs that benefit your wider community, think about out ways that you can share that story with that community and invite them to play a role in supporting the endowment as well. Market the endowment year round. I saw a question come in about, are there times of year that are better than others to launch or renew your endowment marketing campaign? I would say, I don't know that there would be a specific time of year when it's best to do that. You might consider doing it opposite of your stewardship campaign. A lot of times we're focusing on annual giving in the fall. So maybe in the spring, you want to put an emphasis on the endowment campaign and really ramp up your communications about the endowment in the spring. But think about doing that on an ongoing basis as well. So yes, an endowment emphasis period can be a very important and useful tool, but think about how you can put that messaging out and invite people to participate in the endowment year round. So they can, I think finally, Brad, we can skip to the next slide. So that is, we're coming up on 2:30, which is the time that we had allotted for this. We appreciate those of you who have attended live. I hope you were able to get something out of the webinar this afternoon, even just a few ideas that you might walk away with to start communicating to your church about your endowment. As we mentioned at the top, this is the second part of a 3-part series that we're doing on endowment growth. The first part of our series was about Legacy Society events, and there is a recording of that available. We would be happy to share that with you if you were not able to attend part 1. Part 3 of this series is coming up in February, on Wednesday, February 15th at 2 p.m. That will be a panel discussion with some development professionals who are staff of the Episcopal Church Foundation. They're going to be talking about giving some tips about working directly with donors and communicating with donors about opportunities for giving to your endowment fund. So we would encourage you to register for that. Registration information will be coming out soon. If we can advance to the last slide, Brad. I know we didn't have a ton of time for questions today. If you have questions or would like to reach out to ECF, we have our contact information here on the screen. We would be delighted to help your faith community in thinking about its endowment, whether that is endowment growth, whether that's talking about your investment needs, or helping to consider what the best structure for your endowment would be. We would be happy to serve you in any of those areas. Please do feel free to reach out at any time. We appreciate so much you taking this half hour with us this afternoon. We will be distributing a recording of this, like I said, in the next 24 hours. So please be on the lookout for that. And we hope to see you in February at part 3 of this webinar series. So thanks everyone for coming, and we will see you all in February.
Right. And just before we go, we're also going to send out a marketing timeline to everybody who was registered. So that is really going to help you kickstart your marketing efforts for next year and plan it out.
Yes. Thanks, Juliette. I forgot. All right. Take care. We'll see you soon.